Okay, let's start. And I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to record this, and afterwards I'm not going to put up the recording before I edit out all questions. So I'll repeat your questions in order to have it on the recording so that it should be understandable for somebody who's not here. But I want you to be able to ask questions and feel free to let your voice be heard. So that's what we're going to do. And I guess if people are coming on late because of technical difficulties, they'll hear the recording. Okay, so I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. I feel like you are the most powerful, influential group of women in the entire world. I am a young bubby, and I usually speak to women who are around my age, and everyone I speak to is always in awe of the younger generation, as I am too. I feel like you're the ones who decide what's cool and what's not, what's in style. You decide what's beautiful, what's up and coming. You're the ones who lead all the changes and set the standards in ways that are probably a lot bigger than you realize. And that's why I'm so humbled and honored to have this opportunity. Over the next few weeks, B'ezras Hashem, we'll explore some ideas which will empower you to own your own worthiness and dignity, and with that, to really upgrade your life and the world around you. I just want to say a huge thank you to my daughter Chaya for setting this up. It would not have happened without her. We specifically have a limited number of participants on the call because I would love for every one of you to make this your own personal learning experience by asking your questions. So the way this will work is that I'll talk for a couple of minutes, and then we'll open the lines to questions. If you have a question before then, feel free to press star 1 and interrupt. It won't be called an interruption. I want this to be interactive. Each time before we move on to the next idea, actually, for those of you who read the book, you'll see that this is a crash course of the book. However, we're going to be doing this on Sundays and on Thursdays. So each time we'll do like one big idea. Okay, when you press star 1, you'll be unmuted immediately. And if you'd like to present a question without actually speaking, you can text to my phone. That's 917-687-9712. Again, the number for texting questions, if you prefer that, is 917-687-9712. Aside from questions, it's also helpful to learn from experiences. So that's why we're going to be meeting twice a week. It's going to be a little bit intense, but I want it to be involving. Otherwise, by the next Sunday, you forget about what it is. So we're going to be here on Sunday and also on Thursdays. And as we go forward, B'ezras Hashem, starting on Thursdays, we'll also have time for sharing experiences related to these ideas. So, I encourage you to make the most of this learning opportunity. Ask your questions, share your experiences, because that's how you will benefit the most from this. So let's jump right in. We'll start with a story that you may have heard from me before, but it's one of my favorite stories, so I hope it's worth hearing again. Indians who lived on a reservation had a tradition. Every year, a few months before the winter, all the Indians would gather around a huge fire. There would be complete silence except for the crackling of the firewood. And there, the Indian chief would announce what kind of winter the people could expect. This announcement was super important because the Indians needed a certain amount of wood to keep themselves warm throughout the winter. And they based their whole plan of how to get their wood and how to build their wood, how to collect it, and how much they needed on their chief's prediction of the weather. Now, it happened once that there was a new Indian chief, a young one, and he did not acquire the secret wisdom about how to predict the weather. He was so nervous about this, but he didn't know what to do. The day came, the entire tribe gathered around the fire, and all eyes were on the chief. What kind of weather would it be? And he decided to play it safe. He said, you know what? This winter, it will be cold. He said it, with his whole emphasis. Cold. That was a big word. The Indians got very busy chopping wood. A few weeks later, the chief was very nervous because he saw everyone was busy, and what if he made a mistake? He thought of an idea. He secretly left the reservation and pulled out a cell phone. He dialed the National Weather Bureau and said, "Hi, what kind of weather are you expecting to have this winter?" The person on the other end of the line said, "Well, sir, so far it looks like it will be a very cold winter, not a mild one at all." The chief comes back to his reservation, calls a big meeting, and he says, "Look, I thought it would be cold, but it looks like things are changing, and this year it will be a very cold winter." Oh my, very cold. That was an upgrade. The Indians restructured their plans, started chopping even more wood. A few weeks later, the chief once again sneaks off the reservation. He calls the weather bureau, and this time they say, "Sir, we are looking at a winter the likes of which we have never seen before in our lifetime." The chief goes back to his people and again tells them of the change, which made them chop wood in a total frenzy. And the same thing happens a few weeks later, but this time, when the chief calls the weather bureau, he asked them an important question. He said, I've been calling every few weeks, and your prediction keeps on changing. How do you predict the weather? The guy on the other line didn't bat an eyelash. He said, "Oh, sir, our information is always, always very reliable because we keep a close eye on the Indians. And this year, they've been chopping wood like never before." So each of us is a leader in a way that's bigger than we realize. And, right, I don't see you, so I don't know if you got the joke. Basically, they were watching the Indians were watching them. Each of us is a leader in a way that we don't even realize people are watching us. And when we don't recognize the fact that we're leaders, when we don't own our position of greatness, we don't trust ourselves to make decisions in our lives for ourselves. We don't trust our hearts and minds to tell us how to live. Instead, we look outside of ourselves to what other people are doing. And the people we're looking at are actually just like us. They're not guiding themselves by a North Star. They're not making decisions based on the truth or based on their real values. They're making decisions based on our behaviors and our responses to them. My hope for this series is that each of you will be empowered to own your position of leadership and greatness in your life, in your personal life, in the way you influence your friends, and in your impact on the world. So where does it all begin? If we want something to change, where should we start? If you would ask me this question when I was a teenager, or even when I was in my 20s, I'd point to an individual and I'd say, start with her or start with him. I tell you that the best way to change everything in my life would be to change the people around me. If this person or that person would change, everything would be fine. Or I tell you that the changes I wanted could only happen if I had more money, more time, more things. We tend to think that the quality of our life is determined, it's decided by things and people and circumstances. We think that our lives are as good as our money, as good as our popularity, as good as our looks, how skinny we are, how many people like us, the grades we get on tests, the money or positions we earn. Of course, it's not true. Two women meet up at 7 o'clock and walk into a chasna hall together. They sit together, they eat together, they schmooze with the same people, dance in the same circle. They were there for 3 or 4 hours together. One of them comes home and says, "What a dumb waste of time." The other one comes home and says, "Wow, that was the most amazingly fun and special evening I had in like a long time." How could this be? How could they have such a different experience? They were in the exact same situation. They met the same people, saw the same things, ate from the same table, almost from the same plates, danced to the same music, and yet they had a completely different experience. How could this be? It's because only a small part of our experiences, only a small part of everything that we encounter, only a small part of how we feel is caused by circumstances and conditions. Most of our experience, most of how we experience life and our relationships, most of that is caused by our beliefs and our attitudes. Think about a time when you were hanging out with your friends and something happens. Let's say one of the people you're with says something insulting to another person and everybody laughs because the comment happened to be funny, but you are very upset. How could it be that you're so upset and nobody else minds, nobody else cares at all? And this could happen in different ways as well. Certain people in your family or certain behaviors make you really annoyed, while the people around you aren't bothered by it. Or you could have the opposite. Your very good friend feels so offended by a certain person's words, and to you, those exact same words, you were there when the other person said that, you heard it, but it didn't seem offensive at all. So when we are thinking about our day, we usually think it was good or bad depending on things that happen to us. We think that our moods are a result of things that happen or that don't happen. We think that our moods depend on people and things outside of ourselves. But really, Anything outside of ourselves is actually just a small fraction, a tiny weeny slice of what determines the quality of our life. It's only a small percentage of what influences our moods and our behavior. What's the biggest cause of our moods? What is it? Who has the greatest impact on our lives? It's our own selves. It's how we think. It's how we feel. It's how we process all of that. It's how we engage in our lives. I think one of the most important things is it's how we see ourselves in relation to other people and in relation to the situations that we encounter. There was once a person who was complaining a lot about a lot of people. So someone else told him, in all your relationships, in all the experience that you're having with all these different people, the bad experiences, there's a common denominator in all of this. You know what the common denominator is? It's you. That was true for the person who was complaining, and it's also true for each of us. We are the ones who determine the quality of our relationships. We're the ones who get to decide if we will have a happy day, a more successful day, or the opposite. Now, none of this is a secret. This is not pop psychology. Chazal told us this years ago. Chazal told us that we cannot change anything in our life except for one thing, and that thing is everything. Hakol b'idei shamayim chutz me'yer shamayim. Everything is in the hands of heaven except for awe of heaven. What does that mean? What Chazal is telling us here is that we cannot change the fact, for example, that we have this lockdown because of the virus. We cannot change the fact that all the stores are closed, the fact that people need to be alone, and all the chaos and heartache and aggravation and frustration that naturally results. Nothing we can do can change these facts. It's all from Hashem. But there's one thing, one behavior that we could change. And when we change this one thing, we will be free of so much misery, resentment, stress, anxiety, and loneliness. What's this behavior? What's the one thing that we could change? It's what Chazal said, it's our perspective. Chutz me'yer shamayim. It's our perspective, it's our beliefs, our attitudes, the rules that we live by, the way we look at ourselves, and especially the way we look at ourselves in connection to everything we encounter. When we say the word Yirah Shamayim, we typically think of Torah mitzvahs, not practical life. But true Yirah Shamayim means that Hashem is real to us and that we are aware of His presence with us at all times and that His presence makes a positive, meaningful, practical difference. Someone once shared this story. I'll call her Malki. Malki said that one time she'd been traveling for a couple of days, like 3 days, and she came home late in the afternoon. She had traveled for a job interview, and the trip was unsuccessful. So she was physically and emotionally drained. She was exhausted. She wasn't married at the time. She came home and went to her room and planned on just, conking out, going to sleep, making an early night, sleeping for as long as she could. 2 minutes later, there was a knock on her door. Malki was like, "Go away, I'm not interested, get out of here." She wanted to pretend she's sleeping, but she had just gone into her room, so she didn't pretend because she figured it would be a little bit rude. She opened the door, and standing at the door is her very good friend, who she hadn't seen in a long time. The friend was in seminary, out of town, and had come to town for a sibling's wedding, and she surprised Malki. When Malki saw her friend, she was so excited. She hugged her, welcomed into her room, and settled down for a good schmooze. What happened to her tiredness? What happened to her exhaustion? What happened to her real desire, her magnetic pull to that pillow? It was gone, completely and totally. She was so happy to see her friend. Her happiness took away her tiredness. Now, I'm sure you can relate to the story. When someone loves us, knows us well, understands us, and really cares about us, we feel happy to be around them. They make us happy. Imagine if when we're feeling sad, we suddenly remember that Hashem is knocking on our door, that Hashem is coming into our room to keep us company, that He wants to schmooze with us. Imagine what would happen if Hashem's presence could actually make even a little bit of a difference, like a really precious, good friend. Now, some of you might be rolling your eyes, and some of you might be thinking, "Oh, come on, this is like cliche, like get real, get practical." I want to put this whole part about Hashem on the side for a second. We're going to get back to it either later today or maybe on Thursday. We'll talk about that more. For now, I want to get back to the bigger idea. that we started off with. The bigger idea is that we are the ones who make the biggest difference to our moods. We are the ones who are the key players in our lives. So when Chazal said, "Hakol b'idei shamayim chutz mi'yireh shamayim," everything is in the hands of heaven except for fear of heaven, they weren't telling us that we have no control over anything in our lives. They were telling us where to put our energy, where to focus. Because in this space, that's where we can make all the change that we need to make. Most of us, I know that this is I used to do, and I still could slip into this mode. We spend most of our energy trying to control and change things that are beyond our ability to control and change. Chazal is telling us where to put our energy. Don't bother trying to change other people. Don't bother trying to change the past. Don't bother trying to change things that are not in your control. Change yourself. Change your own perspectives. And with that, you will change everything for yourself and even beyond. A tzaddik once said, "When I was young, I thought I could change the world." I think this was said in the name of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. I grew a little older, and I realized I could only change my country. A little older, and I realized, you know what? I can't change my country. Let me go for my city. And then I really grew up, and I realized I could only influence my family. And finally, I matured. And that's when I realized that I could only change myself. And if I would have realized this when I was young, by now I could have changed the world. So we are the greatest influencers in our own lives. We're the greatest influencers in our own lives. We have the biggest impact on the way we experience our relationships, on the way we experience the quality of our lives, on our moods. So we tend to think that I'm in a bad mood because something bad happened. Really? If I'm in a bad mood, it's because of the way I'm processing and understanding and thinking about and therefore feeling about what happened. So now the big question is, if I am the cause of all my moods and all my relationships, if I am the cause of all my happiness or my unhappiness, how could I upgrade my life? How could I upgrade my experiences? And that's the next topic. But before we move on, I want to make sure we're all on the same page about this first big idea, the idea that we are the Indian chiefs, but we're not Indians. We're real chiefs. The idea that we are the greatest influencers. We are the ones in charge of our happiness, our moods, our experiences, our reality. I want to just make sure we get this clear before we move on. So please press *1 to unmute yourself to ask a question. That's a good question. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to know if anybody else has that question or similar, to make sure we cover it all the way. You can press *1. Don't all speak at once. Okay. You could also text if you're a little bit shy to speak. You could text to 917-687-9712. Okay, so I think if we get into it, you're right. So how do we actually? I think what you're asking is, what I'm hearing is, how do we actually do this? Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I am the one, but how do I actually live with that? Is that what you mean? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's what this is about. That's what we're going to do it. That's what we're going to do here. Okay, I thought we're not going to have. Okay, so now the big question is, if I am the biggest influencer in my life, then what's the process of how I get into a bad mood? Because if we want to change, if we want to move away from our bad moods, if we want to move away from our feelings of being stuck in misery, resentment, anxiety, loneliness, and all that, if we want to get unstuck, we need to know how we get there in the first place. So how does it happen? How does it happen and how could it be that two different people could have different experiences, right? Have the same experience and a completely different set of emotions. So the Baal Tanya explains this whole situation in 3 short words that we'll talk about for a couple of minutes. The Baal Tanya says, Hamidos lefi arach hasechel. A person's human emotions are triggered automatically by their system of values. The midos of a person, our emotions, go according to our understanding. Which means if I have an emotion in my heart that's triggered automatically, it's triggered automatically by a belief that I have in my mind, a value system. Let's take this apart. What does it mean to have automatic emotions, and where do these automatic emotions come from? It's really important to know this because remember we said our experiences are created mostly by our emotions. So if we want to have better experiences, we want to know where those emotions come from because that's going to be the way to change them. So we all have, our emotions come to us automatically. We can feel reactions to things that happen to us automatically. Unless somebody experienced something traumatic and there's a gap between, and they don't allow themselves to feel, they don't give themselves permission to feel emotions, then they won't feel emotions or their emotions come slowly. But in a healthy system, if someone insults me, I don't have to think, oh, I'm supposed to be insulted now. I just naturally feel hurt. I feel insulted. So that's how my system works, and that's how your system works. But each of us has a unique system, a system of values, a set of beliefs about what is valuable, what is shameful, what is beautiful, what's special, what matters, and what doesn't. Each of us has a different set of values, a different set of rules that we live by. I remember once, years ago, when our school was very young, a little first grader had an interesting experience. The girls were sitting in a circle, and the teacher bent down to pick something up from the floor. As the teacher bent down, one of the little girls, a first grader, kicked the teacher in the part that was picking up the most, what should I say? She kicked the teacher's back. Of course, the teacher was like horrified. What kind of kid kicks a teacher in the back? And the girl was sent out of class. So she came to me. The principal was probably absent that day. And I asked the girl, why did you kick your teacher? Without batting an eyelash, she said, because she bended. To this girl, when someone bends, you kick them. That was her rule that she followed. She was probably, she was an impulsive little girl. But she didn't mean anything bad. Somebody bends, you kick. Now, obviously, that's a very simple example. It's a rule that you would outgrow naturally. But our mind has many different layers. There's a layer on the outside, which is what we call our conscious mind. That's the part of our minds that we're aware of. That's what we hear when we listen to what's going on in our heads. And then there are many layers that we call subconscious. Subconscious means it's beneath the surface of our awareness. Subconsciously, each of us has a unique value system. We have a set of beliefs that automatically triggers our emotions. We so much don't realize that this is happening. It happens automatically. In other words, we don't even realize that these ideas are there, that our emotions are triggered by an idea, or that our behavior is triggered by an idea, but they're there. I want to share an example about this that, I literally saw this in action. Years ago, I have 3 little boys. They're not so little anymore, but they're each 2 years apart. And before that, we have 2 girls. And then after these 3 boys, we, Baruch Hashem, have had a little girl. And this little girl is adorable. She's still adorable. But when she was 2, after the winter of her turning 2, so she was about 2.5, right? It was the first time wearing dresses. And before Pesach, I got her a bunch of cheap, little, cute, adorable dresses. And her big sisters, who were probably, I don't know exactly how old, but, elementary age, had so much fun dressing this little dolly. Literally, she was a doll. And every day, twice a day, they dressed her all over Pesach, admiring her, playing with her, talking about how cute she was. It was like, that was like a big part of our Yom Tov. On the last day of Yom Tov, we went to visit my sister-in-law, and she had a bunch of my kids' cousins from Eretz Yisrael, a bunch of her kids that were there. So it was a big circle of cousins of all ages, from little to big, there was a bunch of girls having like a conversation. And we walked in, and my kids, my bigger ones even, were like, we're standing on the outside, we observe a little, and then we'll join, right? So the girls are standing on the outside of the circle, observing. The little 2.5-year-old, or yeah, just over 2, walks right to the middle of the circle. And what do you think she said? I wish someone could press star 1 and tell me, what do you think she said when she got to the middle of the circle? Press star 1 and tell me what you think. Otherwise, I'll tell you. She said, "You like my dress?" While we were having so much fun dressing her and playing with her and talking about how adorable she was, she developed a belief. The belief that she is valuable, that's her entry point, that's her point of interest, that's what makes her a someone. Now, it was adorable to see, and I remember thinking, oh my, we better, I don't want her to grow up thinking that that's what makes her who she is. She could be cute, but that's not what makes her special. That's not what makes her that's not what's precious and valuable and unique about her. So this is really, we all have such experiences from shameful experience. I'll just give you another example. Let's say a 5-year-old girl bumps into a table. It's Erev Pesach, and the girl's older siblings have been sitting for hours cracking nuts. As the little girl bumps into the table, somehow she causes an entire huge bowl of shelled nuts to fall onto the floor. Everyone's mad at her and starts screaming at her. Being a little girl, her emotions are stronger than her intellectual development. So she doesn't know how to process what's going on, but she definitely feels upset and ashamed. So what's she going to say? What she's going to conclude in her mind is, something's wrong with me. Something is shameful about me. Something is bad about me. Something's ugly. So if we as children had a hurtful experience, and everybody had hurtful experiences, each of us had hurtful experiences when we were kids. And we had these experiences at times when we didn't have the intellectual capacity to process it. Like this little 5-year-old girl doesn't have the ability to know, oh, those adults are really wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I was running, which is a normal behavior in a house. That bowl shouldn't have been all the way at the edge of the table, for example. Right? She doesn't have that ability to process it. She just takes it all in and decides something's wrong with me. Something's shameful about me. I am bad. So each of us has such experiences. And if we never process those emotions, it's like we're carrying them around in a backpack. If we were very ashamed and we never let go of that, it's like we have a hot button for shame. So then even if we see somebody else being ashamed, it's going to bother us. It wakes up that backpack that we're carrying around, and it's going to bother us more than it's going to bother somebody else whose backpack does not have that kind of shame that we have. So that's on an emotional level, and that's also a belief level. You know, I didn't write this out completely because I was counting on people asking questions. Yeah, please ask questions.
Okay,
please go ahead.
I don't know if this is something that you were planning on saying or not, but based on what you just said, does that mean that like we said, the way to change our life is going to be by changing our beliefs and the way we think and whatever. And now we just said that a lot of things that happen to us throughout our life are built many beliefs that we don't necessarily, that at the time we didn't know how to process differently. Does that mean that the only way, but it's not either, is there any other way to move to change beliefs besides for going back and reprocessing all of those? Because sometimes you don't know where, meaning like what you just said.
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. So I'm going to say this, that the truth of who we are is happiness. Look at a baby. A baby's always happy. A baby doesn't know how to get depressed. A baby does not know how to get in a bad mood because a baby feels safe, taken care of, loved. We each have that at our core. We have the ability to be happiness. Happiness is our natural state of being. What happens is we have beliefs, and we're also loving naturally. What happens is we have beliefs that get in our way of experiencing that happiness, that joy. We naturally rejoice. That's our natural state of being. But we have beliefs and wisdom, and some people say it's like, oh, I'm too jaded. I'm too mature to be so happy. It's not maturity. It's cynical. It's it's experiences that get in our way of that open-ended joy. So do I believe, so what I'm suggesting is this. What I'm suggesting is this. At the bottom, the behind every feeling of misery, one other thing before I say the bottom line, I want to add one more point. And that's this. Our core believes in Hashem. I started touching on that a little bit, and we'll go back to it a little bit more next week because it's too big to do everything in one sitting. But let's just say this. A Yid is wired that at the core of our being, we have a part of Hashem. We have a part of Hashem in us, and it's the deepest part of ourselves. And because Hashem is in us and part of us, anytime we're acting in contradiction of Hashem's emes, we're also acting in contradiction of ourselves. And because of that, anytime we're not in harmony with Hashem's emes, we're also not in harmony with ourselves. There's going to be some fallout. There's going to be some emotional turmoil. There's going to be some emotional mix-up, I'm going to use the word dysfunction, emotional unhealthiness. It's going to be. So the bottom line of what I'm saying is that behind every ounce of misery, resentment, helplessness, self-pity, jealousy, or anything else that makes you feel stuck and limited and unable to do this moment with a sense of wholehearted worthiness and joy, behind that moment, there is a belief that's not true. And the belief, you might not even know you have that belief, but by coming in touch with it, by becoming aware of it, and choosing consciously to let go of it and replacing it with the truth you really want to believe that, you really want to live by, you also let go of the misery, resentment, stuck, self-pity, helplessness, and emotional chaos. Now, does that mean we're never going to be, if someone does this work, you never be sad, you never get upset, you never get angry, you never get annoyed, frustrated, and stuck? Absolutely not. But what it does mean is you get less stuck and more easily unstuck. You get less deeply in the mud, and you get much more quickly out of it. You get less miserable, less angry, less frustrated, and you get much more quickly out of it. I want to go back to the words and tie all of this together to what we said in the beginning. I want to summarize everything that we just said. We said that we are the key players. We ourselves, every single person has the greatest impact on our moods and the way we experience life, including the quality of our relationships. Okay, the quality of our moods and the quality of relationships all begins within our own minds and hearts. So if we look inside, where does that begin? And we said, a person's human emotions are triggered automatically by our value systems, by what we value. Now, where does our value system come from? It could come from our childhood. It could come from the people around us. It could come from what we naturally absorb. And I want to I want to just say that there's two general categories of beliefs. There's beliefs that are true, and there are beliefs that are not true. Truth always leads us to emotional wellness. If it's true, it's safe, it's secure, it's strong, it's healthy. If it's not true, it's dysfunctional ultimately. It's chaotic, it's tumultuous. If you believe something that's not true and you act on it, it's a scam. Ultimately, one day, if it doesn't happen today, it'll happen the next day. Ultimately, somewhere, somehow, it's not going to lead you to feeling strong and healthy, safe, secure, and emotionally sound, right? So truth is the zone we want to live by. All our beliefs, all our values, everything we ultimately are connected to, any idea we are connected to, is either going to be true or it's going to be not true. And I want to suggest that anything that's consistent with Hashem's reality is true, because that's the only truth that's really absolute. And anything that's not consistent with Hashem's reality is not true. Now, you're going to tell me that there are so many ideas that have nothing to do with Hashem. The fact that she insulted me, that she's mean, has nothing to do with Hashem. What does that have to do? Next week, Emir Hashem, we're going to explore, we're going to get more into understanding how beliefs about ourselves are connected, and beliefs about other people are connected to our beliefs about Hashem. For now, today, my goal today was, number one, that we should start seeing ourselves as the key players in our moods and in our relationships, and to recognize that our beliefs and value system is actually a very strong play, has all the impact on our moods and ultimately on our behaviors, which then, creates our reality. So I want to ask you, I'm going to assign a little bit of homework, and then I'm going to ask you if you have any more questions. And if you don't have questions, I would appreciate you telling me a summary in your own words. So here goes. The homework that I'm thinking of is, we talked about having different layers of our mind, right? The one that we are aware of is called our conscious mind. That's the part that if you think about what you're saying, like, oh, what am I thinking? That's your conscious mind, what you hear. And then we have the parts that we're not aware of. That's our subconscious mind. In our mind, there's like a huge spotlight in every given moment. The spotlight of our mind is focused on different things. So here's the homework that I'd like you to think about this week. Throughout the week, whenever you get upset, whenever you get frustrated, no matter what that is, like no matter what the upset looks like, it could be jealousy, it could be anger, it could be frustration, annoyance, whatever it is, slow down and pay attention. Notice what's going on in your mind and heart. Now, you might right away notice that the spotlight of your mind is focused on what other people are doing wrong. That's normal. That's what happens to all of us, right? Why am I annoyed? Because the other person is annoying. What do you mean, why am I annoyed? Now, I'm going to ask you in that moment when you're annoyed to turn the spotlight onto yourself. And it's not just annoyed. It's, sometimes what I really want you to look at is not just the little annoyances, like somebody, chewing in your ear, or somebody scratching, or somebody making noise. I mean the stuff that cut to your core, the insults, the put-downs, the frustrations, that kind of stuff, the feeling stuck, the self-pity, the helplessness. So when you're feeling those kind of stuff, turn the spotlight onto yourself. Instead of focusing on the other person, on what the other person did wrong, try to think about what you're thinking. What did their behavior make you feel about you? What did they make you feel about yourself? In this moment of anger, frustration, annoyance, misery, self-pity, what were you thinking about you? And next week, on Thursday, I'd love, or during the week, if you have a moment of awareness where you actually identified a thought, a belief. One more thing. I want to ask you, after you say, okay, what did that make you feel about you? Okay, it made me feel upset. It made me feel insulted. I would love if you take that a step further and say, let's say you came up with an emotion. Ask yourself, what's that emotion saying? What are the words of the emotion? What's the message? What's the belief? What's the rule? And if you just have an idea in your head, try to come up with the emotion. I think it's important to know the emotion and also what the words are, what the value is, what the belief is. And I'd love to hear from you, because what we're going to do next week is we're going to take a look at some of those big ideas that you come up with, some of these big beliefs, and we're going to show, I want you to discover for yourself how maybe those ideas are not even true. I want you to start challenging those beliefs, challenging, those ideas in your head. Because if you can let go of a belief, you don't want to be living, you don't want to be controlled by ideas that are not true, right? So we're going to start challenging them, and we're going to learn tools to identify what we really want to hold on to, what's in our benefit, and how to go about letting go of beliefs that are actually not true and beliefs that are not serving us well, beliefs that are sucking the joy out of our lives, or beliefs that are, driving us towards unhealthiness and dissatisfaction in our relationships. And I really trust that doing this work, I've seen this happen for myself. When I was a teenager, I had no true self-confidence. And even years ago, like if I spoke in public, I would be like, and I had this like annoying little giggle. Like if I was ever uncomfortable, I would like, like that was like, every other minute. And it took me a long time. And this was the work that I did to get me to a place of so much more strength, and really owning my position of leadership, of worthiness, of dignity, and strength. And it transformed my life. And I'm so excited for you to experience how it could transform yours, because in the last couple of years, I've really seen these ideas transform so many people's lives. So we have a couple of minutes left. I can either do questions, but if you don't have a question, I would so much appreciate if you can tell me one idea that you're taking home with you tonight. Press star 1 to speak up. It's a very good question. Certain beliefs, and I think it's a fantastic question. I'm so glad you asked it. So forever and a day and a minute and a second, certain beliefs are very deeply ingrained in us, and we don't even realize how ingrained it is. For example, let's say I believe I am ultimately a shameful creature, and I am a loser and a lowlife, and I'm stupid, and I can't do anything right, and you get what I'm saying. I'm shameful. Okay. Now, in a moment of clarity, I might have a moment of clarity and decide, hey, I'm actually not that, right? But because that belief is so deeply ingrained in me, I might have to peel off another layer, and I might have to peel off another layer, and I might have to peel off another. I might discover another layer. So it takes a minute. The minute you realize, you change. You experience change from the moment you start. But then, and you think, like, I remember when I first started doing this work, I was like, yay, this is so exciting. But then a year later, I was like, oh my, and I thought a year ago I had let go of my beliefs. Like, I wouldn't call it back at square one. I would say there's more to go. Because Hashem is infinite, our neshama is infinite, and we are infinitely precious and worthy, and we're infinitely awesome, beyond description. So we could discover a little bit of our goodness, and then tomorrow we're going to discover that we're even stronger and better and more precious and more valued than we thought. And that's going to always happen. In a certain sense, yes. In a sense, no. Because it's like if anybody's familiar with addiction and recovery, right? An addict is somebody who has zero control. We'd identify, right? We say we have zero control over certain behaviors, right? So a recovered addict, they did the work, and they come to a place where they will really never do that again. They'll really never do that. But they won't stop surrendering to Hashem. They won't stop doing the work that brought them there, and that brought them to the place of goodness. Because the minute we stop connecting, here's the thing, which I wasn't going to go to today, but let's just put it out there. We have a Yetzer Hara. Our Yetzer Hara is an internal force of distraction, and delusion. So, and because it's an active force within us, every single day we might get new ideas and new beliefs, and we might get distracted from the truth that we want to live by. And for example, let's say I gave the example of like letting go of the belief that I am shameful. there's a part of me, my Yetzer Hara, that I never get rid of my Yetzer Hara. And my Yetzer Hara has this belief system that if I'm not the best, then I'm shameful. We'll explore this more, but in a nutshell, our Yetzer Hara has this, operates on a mindset. I am created by myself. I am here with myself and for myself. So therefore, our Yetzer Hara, if I'm not perfect, then I'm nothing, because I am by myself, with myself, for myself. If I'm not perfect, what am I going to be? I'm a loser. I'm a nothing. I better be good, right? As opposed to the neshama, our true self, which goes by the mindset of I am here by Hashem, with Hashem, for Hashem. Totally different state of being. So because we have this part of us that will always believe, it has a tendency to believe I am shameful, I could get pulled into that place. I could touch that part of me that believes that way, and I'll get, for a minute, for an hour, I'll get stuck in misery and self-pity. You get it's fitness. When someone does exercise, your body gets stronger, and you can do the exercise better. And when someone's starting it, like the first time you walk 3 miles, it's very hard. But once you get used to it and you practice it, it's nothing. Walking 3 miles is not work. But that doesn't mean that you're always going to stay fit, and you're always going to, that means the minute you stop walking, you can get to a place where you get, squeaky and rusty all over again, right? It's right. Fitness. It's the same thing. This is spiritual and emotional fitness. You do the work, you get stronger, you get more fit, you get healthier, you have a happier life, you have stronger, more meaningful relationships. But and you get to a place where you're so connected to this way of being, you don't, like somebody who really thrives on exercise, they don't want to not do exercise. They enjoy it. They don't look at it as work anymore. It's something it's something that you ride on. It doesn't exhaust you. It gives you energy, as opposed to the first time you do it when it seems so hard. Gotcha. I feel like we touched on it. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we need to wrap up now. I want to remind you of the homework. Throughout this week, whenever you see yourself
can I ask
stuck,
one question?
Yeah, sure, but literally 2 minutes. Go for it.
Yeah, about the homework. Most of the examples we gave tonight were about how the beliefs get developed. Can you give one example of what the homework would look like? Meaning, how something that happens now could be a play out of a belief?
Yeah. Somebody insults somebody. I call my friend, and she doesn't answer my call. I text her, and it rings twice, and then boom. Her phone is on, but it didn't ring, so she rejected my call. Okay. I text her, she doesn't respond. I text her again, she still doesn't respond. 3 hours later, I try her again. I'm not getting a response. Meanwhile, I'm in touch with another friend who told me that this friend, they were schmoozing. I know that she was schmoozing with my other friend. So of course I'm going to be offended. Like, what am I, chopped liver? Why am I being ignored? I'll be annoyed at her. Oh, she's being annoying. So in that moment, in such a moment, and that's one example, somebody asks you to do something and they say it in a condescending way. Somebody reminds you of a fault. Somebody, I think everyone, you get the idea. Different things happen with the people in your family, with your friends. Anything could happen that makes you annoyed, frustrated, or hurt. In that moment, your spotlight automatically will be focused on the other person. Oh, they're such an annoying person. They're so disgusting. They're so mean. They're so obnoxious. They're so whatever. What I'm asking you to do is turn the spotlight instead into your own heart and your own mind and identify, oh, I am feeling hurt. I'm feeling rejected. I'm feeling put down. I'm feeling dismissed. And I think maybe not important. And if your thoughts are, again about, oh, I think the other person is mean. Again, turn it back to yourself. What do I think about myself? And you might say, I think I'm an idiot for being friends with her. Or you might say, I think I am not cared about. Whatever it is, make note of it, because this is, awareness is where the light turns on. Once you're aware of what you believe and how it's impacting you, then we could start working with that belief and making decisions of, well, is that really true? We could start challenging it. Does that answer your question? I don't hear that person. I hope that answers the question, and I hope that the homework is clear. And feel free to text me at 917-687-9712 if anything today was unclear. And I really look forward to rejoining next week, same time, same number, and same PIN number at 8 o'clock on Thursday evening. In the meantime, I want to wish you a wonderful week. Thank you. And freilichen Lag Ba'omer. I did want to hear what you're taking from it. So anyone want to press star 1 and say what one thing that you're taking home? And I want to say that sometimes somebody might think, oh, don't get so technical, like looking at your beliefs. Come on, like what is this, psychology? No. The only way, the only way to serve Hashem in our hearts and with our emotions and with our deepest self is to know our deepest self. And once we know our deepest self, we can actually, we can serve Hashem and elevate and uplift that part of ourselves. So this is all good work. It's not psychology. It's really Avodas Hashem. And as you'll see next week, it's going to do good for you, Mir Hashem, with Hashem's help. So I'm looking forward, and thank you so much for joining and for giving us the opportunity to make this happen. Gute Nacht.
Thank you.